everybody, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I am here to give my complete and utter full thoughts on why I am not a fan, or the biggest fan, of the end of No Way Home. Now, I have had couple days to think about it. I've made 2 videos I just made a video yesterday where I talked about it, and I've had a couple days to really think about it, and I acknowledge that I am in the vast minority on this. This is something that I'm in the vast minority on. This is not one of those situations where I can kind of come from a place of strength when I'm, voicing this opinion. I'm probably not gonna have. I'm gonna go on a limb and say I'm not gonna have a single comment in the comment section of this video who agrees with me on this. But personally, I wasn't the biggest. Now, okay, I'm gonna preference, gotta get these preferences out the way. First of all, I loved Spider-Man No Way Home. I gave it a 9 out of 10. It's one of the best MCU movies ever made. It's one of the best comic book movies ever made. It's gonna be remembered forever for what it did. I'm going full spoilers. When you bring together all of these Spider-Man villains from past movies and you bring Tobey and Andrew in, you're already elevating this with, there's so much emotion and so well written. It was so great. It was like, and I said this to Seth when I was watching it, I was like, I love 95% of this movie. I said, I love 95% of this movie. And the 5% I didn't like was the ending. Because for me personally, and like I said, I talked about this briefly, but I really want to get into it here. For me personally, my issues with the ending is, I am a fan of the MCU Spider-Man. I feel like all the people who like this ending were not actual fans of the MCU Spider-Man. If you like this ending, then you're one of the minorities, then you're in the minority of the camp who weren't into MCU Spider-Man. Let's put this in context, because I see a lot of people bumping their chest and kind of like, oh yes, this is the Spider-Man. He's finally the Spider-Man. He's finally really Spider-Man, because he's broke, because he has no one, because he's alone, because he's poor, because he's depressed, and he has no shot, and it's just going to be the same old thing over and over and over again, which has always been my problem and complaint, and why I always found the MCU Spider-Man to be refreshing, because Sam Raimi's and Sam Raimi and Mark Webb / the Amazing Spider-Man movies, they were doing kind of the same thing, and I was like, Jesus Christ, can we have some fun? I mean, Spider-Man is such a fun character in the comics. Yes, it can get tragic. Yes, it can get dark, and yes, he can be lonely. But for the most part, he is a happy character. He is a joyful character. He's a colorful character. And, his interactions with other Avengers and whatnot are very colorful. And there are different stories and different things. And I've already talked about how, if you actually go back and watch the original Stan Lee run on Spider-Man, that original run is more in line with Tom Holland's Spider-Man than Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. But, I've already talked about that. Really, the MCU Spider-Man is an amalgamation of the OG Sam Raimi Spider-Man and the Ultimate Spider-Man. That's really what this version of him is. It's why I always laugh at the Iron Boy Jr. stuff and at the whole he's too reliant, because what kind of goes over people's heads is, I don't remember if it's the first issue or the second, but within the first few issues, one of his biggest things is he desperately wants to be a member of the Fantastic Four. He desperately wants to be a member of the Fantastic Four, and guess what? He looks up to Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, like an older brother, a hero he wants to be like. That is in the OG comics. That's why when people say the Iron Boy Jr. shit and that's not my Spider-Man, I roll my eyes, because I'm like, you don't know what the fuck you're actually talking about. You watch the Sam Raimi movies, and that's what you think it is because of that. But when you go back and look at the comics, the actual comics of this character, it is in line with the MCU version of Spider-Man. He was never in this universe by himself. He looked up, even when I was going back and watching the 90s cartoon, he was he was technically by himself because he was isolated, but he looked up to all the Avengers, Iron Man, Tony Stark, and he talks about them all the time. But so that's why I've always thought the argument was kind of dumb. In fact, do you know in the comics, I'm just going to keep throwing comic book knowledge at you since you fuckers know stuff, Did you know? Do you know who discovered that the Venom symbiote was actually, that the symbiote, the black suit, was actually a symbiote, actually a creature? Did Spider-Man figure that out by himself? No. Did Spider-Man figure that out while he was alone moping in his room? No. Did he figure that out because, no. Reed Richards figured out that it was, that was a symbiote and told him about it. This is the thing. The Spider-Man character has always been like this. And I've said it before, Sam Raimi's movies have warped people's perception of what it actually is because those movies were so successful, just like Blade. Just like Blade. Blade was so successful that it changed what the Blade character was and made it more like the movie. And same thing happened with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, is that those movies were so successful that they started to mold and change things. Just like in the old school, like I said, Stan Lee run, Uncle Ben was a deal. Uncle Ben was a deal. But Uncle Ben, I told Seth this, Uncle Ben was the equivalent of Yinsen in the Iron Man story. He's the catalyst for putting Iron Man on his change. But you don't see Tony stopping every 5 seconds thinking about Yinsen. That doesn't happen in the comics. There's a couple times that Uncle Ben pops up in the original Spider-Man runs. He doesn't even actually tell him with great power comes great responsibility in the beginning like it did in the movies. That doesn't even happen. So for the people who are like fucking professional Spider-Man people and who think they know what Spider-Man is, you actually don't. But that's me just going on a rant about the idiot Iron Man Jr. thing, just because if you're gonna say that, then I guess you could say the OG Spider-Man was Fantastic Four Jr. because he was a groupie for the Fantastic Four OG. Anyways, the problem I have with these ending, in my opinion, is because it really like the way, like, I'm coming at this from a couple different angles actually, because I have a problem in understanding. Because you have to understand, when this movie was being made, Marvel and Sony were not sure. Well, they sure they're doing, now they are. But when this movie was getting written, and stuff, Marvel and Sony weren't sure how this relationship was going to go. They weren't sure how this relationship was going to go. It was real, tense. They might have, tense. And it felt like that this ending was written in a way so that if Sony needs to, they can just yank them out of the MCU without anything happening. It felt like it felt like a soft reboot. And I've told Seth this before. There are so many hints that this is completely one of those they don't know what they're going to do next things, because there are multiple hints throughout the course of the film that tell you that. Not only the fact that, they end the movie with Doctor Strange will return instead of ending the movie with Spider-Man will return, which is what always happens at the end of films. Which you would expect to have happened at the end of this film. But the fact of the matter is, they covered up, like when Peter goes to Aunt May's grave and puts down a rose, they covered up the date in which she died. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. I think they might even covered up the date she was born, but I know for a fact they covered up the date that she died. And it's so obvious to me that they did that so that if they, like I said, if Sony has to pull him from the MCU, they can just write it any way they want to be like, oh, this is when she died, and this is and this is when this happened. And it's pretty clear to me that that's pretty much how that went down. It's pretty much how that happened. And that's a business side of me. So a business side of me is like, I get this ending from a business perspective. From a business perspective, I get this ending. You want to give a degree of separation. You're like, in case Sony wants to cut bait and get out of there, you don't want it to be like we're super tied down. Because I always said that. I was like, I'm not, even when I heard the rumors that Sony might be trying to pull away from the MCU, I was like, how do you do that? His aunt's dating Happy. He basically was Iron Man's protege. I mean, he lives in a world of superheroes. I mean, he's interacted with a bunch of superheroes. He's went down to space and all these different things. I'm just like, well, Nick Fury knows him. I mean, I'm like, how are you gonna do that? That doesn't even make any sense. And they found a way by the whole mind erase thing. And neatly, he's still technically in the MCU. And it's nothing for if the relationship grows or God bless, Sony gets bought and they have no choice but to sell the rights back to Disney. They can easily just have a great story around it, and then boom, everything's back to normal. Everyone remembers. everyone like who's important to him remembers that he's Spider-Man. Everyone who knew that he was like, all the good people know he's Spider-Man, the heroes and whatnot. The people who know that he's Spider-Man know that he's Spider-Man, and you know he can go back to the way things were. But the problem is, from a creative standpoint, this ending makes both Homecoming and Far From Home and everything that happened in these events basically worthless. Because all of those relationships, all of those adventures, all of those characters that he interacted with, it's like, am I gonna live in a world where Doctor Strange doesn't remember this awesome adventure that he had? Like, am I gonna live in a world where Happy Hogan, after all they've been through, like their rough times that they've been through, and the death of Iron Man and them consoling, like, am I gonna live in a world where that's not a thing? Like, they don't know each other? Like, he's gonna have to meet Ned and MJ all over again? Like, I'm just like, all this shit just happened, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, I get it. Okay, if you want to get him to this point, there had to have been a different way to go about this than to essentially erase all the personal journey stuff that we've already seen. It's just gone. And I'm just like, okay. And the thing that upset me too is, if you wanted to just do this, just go back to doing what has already been done, go back to doing the old stuff, go back to it, you should have just started this way. Because at least at least you wouldn't have wasted my time with previous other movies of me enjoying this version of Spider-Man. And I know there's a lot of people out there for some reason think that, you know, oh, this Spider-Man's been coddled, this Spider-Man's been babied, this Spider-Man hasn't had struggles, and all this other ludicrous shit. It's as if they haven't been watching the movies. It's as if they forget that technically this version of Spider-Man was Spider-Man for 7 months in a like homemade hoodie suit by himself fighting crime. Like, they forget that technically he was in the cloth suit. He wasn't even like he's not getting his ass whooped. That he didn't almost get killed by the Vulture. He's gotten the shit kicked out of him in every single film. It just looks different. Like I said, people have a perception of what they think Spider-Man should look like. And I always admired and was so excited about this new direction the MCU was going in with Spider-Man. And I know some people didn't like it, but I did. So when they did this at the end, had him even make a cloth suit, which was kind of like, in my mind, I was like, nobody in the MCU has a cloth suit. No matter what it looks like, it might be a costume, it might say costume. No one actually has a costume. Everyone, Wanda's outfit's like magical. Doctor Strange is like, you know, robes and garb from the Sanctum. Like everyone's outfit is something. Captain America's not just running around in a costume. It's like Kevlar. Everyone has something because the MCU has been, that's the whole reason that, like, from the point, that's why Tony made the Spider-Man suit, because it never made sense that he could even make that damn suit. Never made sense. Never made sense that he could make that suit, which is why Tony made the suit in the MCU. And why it's not just a cloth suit is because no one wears cloth suits, because that's stupid. You're a superhero. Get a better costume. So like I said, they just went back and they did all the things that they avoided doing, that they changed. They did them. And it was just like, if we were just gonna do this anyways, why didn't we just start here? It felt like a waste of my time. And even though I am upset about the ending, I am completely self-aware that Kevin Feige and Disney and Sony are still working on a Spider-Man 4. So who knows what's going to happen there. But I really hope that this isn't the end. I really hope that this isn't really the end, because it just, like I said, I've always complained though about Spider-Man, even in the comics, because it never actually made sense that Spider-Man worked at the Daily Bugle. It never actually made sense that, you know, he was broke all the time, because he's a genius scientist and he could get into any school that he wants to just off of that alone. Like, he's so smart, he could design something like easy and fucking get into a school. And on top of that, he's on first name basis with all these other couples. But he could get into a school easy, scholarship. Easy. He could get, like, that's the thing. It never made any sense, especially today, which is why the MCU version of Spider-Man, they tried to make sense, because yes, he's a genius, so he wouldn't just be going to a normal high school. Yes, he'd be going to a college. So they had to force it because they know it didn't make any sense that he would be broke and sitting at home. Because I don't know about you, but most modern kids who are geniuses aren't working for, well, it's not a newspaper company anymore, but they're not working for people like that. But I digress. That's my feelings on it. I could keep ranting on, but I'm leaving it at that. I'm done talking about it. I'm leaving it at that. Hopefully, maybe they'll fix it. Maybe they're gonna just do this. I know everyone is excited about this. All the people who are excited about this were not actual fans of the direction they were going in. Even though statistically, this is the most successful direction Spider-Man has ever gone in. Every single one of these movies have averaged over $800 million. Every single one of these movies in the Spider-Man trilogy are 90 or above. The most successful Spider-Man trilogy was done by the MCU going in this direction. And in fact, fans dug it. So, I don't know. That's why I'm coming to the conclusion. I'm choosing to believe that this was done for business. Anyways, thank you guys for joining the Comic Game Movie Show. Please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comment section how wrong I am. I know no one's going to agree with me on this, but I'm okay with that. This is the last time I'm going to talk about it. I'm not really going to talk about it again after this. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to move on past this because I still love the movie. I still had a fantastic time with it. I still think it's one of the best MCU films ever made. So it may be creeping into the top 10. It may be in the top 10. I have to really go back and think about it. But I left the theater and I've just felt like, well, if we were going to do this, why didn't we just start here? Why waste my time with those other films if you were just going to fucking go back and do the same old shit that you had already been doing? Honestly, why? Anyways, thank you guys for joining the Comic Game Movie Show again. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.